What happened between Rhaegar and Lyanna? This essay will go over the story of Rhaegar and Lyanna as I see it. It comes from reading the books and listening to members of the community who deserve credit for putting on their tin foil and researching some of the background rabbit holes this essay falls down. This is an unexplored alternate version from my perception. What happened with Rhaegar and Lyanna? The short version of the story propagated by the general populace of Westeros is that, for no apparent reason but lust, Rhaegar Targaryen kidnapped Lyanna Stark. This, in spite of her betrothal to Robert Baratheon, who apparently loved her dearly. This event caused a cascade of incidents culminating in Robert's rebellion and the ousting of the Targaryen dynasty in favor of Baratheon rule. The first time the books begin to poke a hole in this narrative is when we slowly discover that Lyanna did not in fact love Robert. At the start of this drama, Ned was barely out of his teens and thought that having Robert as a real brother would be a good idea. As a foster brother, Robert was great fun and his womanizing was a laugh. He was strong, tall, and handsome, and had no need to force himself on the ladies as far as we hear. Ned wasn't the type to consider dabbling in infidelity himself. He assumed that his friend could just turn off the spigot when he found himself a wife to bed. He suggested his sister Lyanna for the position. Robert will never keep to one bed, Lyanna had told him at Winterfell, on the night long ago when their father had promised her hand to the young Lord of Storm's End. I hear he has gotten a child on some girl in the Vale. Ned had held the baby in his arms. He could scarcely deny her, nor would he lie to his sister, but he had to assure her that what Robert did before their betrothal was of no matter, that he was a good man and true, who would love her with all his heart. Lyanna had only smiled. Love is sweet, dearest Ned, but it cannot change a man's nature. Lyanna, on the other hand, could probably see Robert's eyes wandering even when they were deep in conversation. He could not keep his attention on one woman even at this early stage of their relationship, and she told Ned as much. Ned, in his bromance, believed Robert's morals and honor were just like his in all ways and insisted that Robert would be faithful. Lyanna knew better. Meanwhile, in Winterfell, Rickard Stark, their father, was being advised by a Maester Wallace. Maester Wallace was the bastard son of a Hightower girl and an Archmaester of the Citadel. They tend to us when we are sick and injured, or distraught over the illness of a parent or a child. Whenever we are weakest and most vulnerable, there they are. Sometimes they heal us, and we are duly grateful. When they fail, they console us in our grief, and we are grateful for that as well. Out of gratitude, we give them a place beneath our roof, and make them privy to all our shames and secrets, a part of every council, and before too long, the ruler has become the ruled. That is how it was with Lord Rickard Stark. Maester Wallace was his grey rat's name. Wallace gave credence to the idea that Lady Dustin referred to as Southron ambitions. Brandon, as the heir, was indoctrinated with this theory. To this end, Rickard betrothed his eldest son to Catelyn Tully of Riverrun instead of Barbary Dustin. The lords and people were suffering under Aerys' rule as he descended into madness, but he was too powerful to be easily overcome. The only way they could remove him would be for a majority of the great houses to form alliances and confront him in force. The great houses began creating these alliances, many being cemented by marriage. The North, up to this point, was insular and followed the old gods. Rickard's wife, for instance, had been Lyanna Stark, a cousin. Maester Wallace was sent north to convince Rickard to look south to create alliances with southern lords against the Targaryens. Once he forged his chain, his secret father and his friends wasted no time in dispatching him to Winterfell to fill Lord Rickard's ears with poisoned words as sweet as honey. The Tully marriage was his notion. Never doubt it. It is hinted that the Maesters continued to aspire to the elimination of the Targaryen dynasty. For instance, Marwyn the Mage insinuated that Maester Aemon was sent to the wall because he was a Targaryen. Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around? Gallant dragon slayers armed with swords? The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. Ask yourself why Aemon Targaryen was allowed to waste his life upon the wall, when by rights he should have been raised to Archmaester. His blood is why. He could not be trusted, no more than I can. The heir to the Iron Throne, Rhaegar Targaryen, also knew that something had to be done about his father. He began planning to call a council to retire Aerys and place himself on the throne. As a child, Rhaegar was bookish, until he found a scroll that incited him to train as a swordsman. He would visit his birthplace, Summerhall, to write songs on his harp and possibly confer with the ghost of Highheart, and search for older Targaryen writings that may have survived the conflagration. He became obsessed with the prophecy of the prince that was promised. First he thought it was himself, then he believed it would be his son. Perhaps the Woods Witch gave him some insight. He read in his text that the dragon must have 3 heads, and came to the conclusion that he would need to have 3 children mirroring Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives. Rhaegar grew to be loved amongst his friends and the people of Westeros. He courted the affection of the small folk that were ignored by the Hand of the King, Tywin Lannister, and his father, Aerys. Tywin wanted Rhaegar to marry his daughter, Cersei. He brought her to King's Landing and pushed her in his path. Rhaegar's hand, however, was given to Elia Martell of Dorne's ruling family, but Aerys accepted Cersei's prodding to put Jaime in the Kingsguard, which unsurprisingly sent Tywin and his daughter back to Casterly Rock. Rhaegar married Elia Martell and soon had a daughter with her on Dragonstone, who he named Rhaenys. Aerys had refused to attend the wedding, and when Rhaegar presented his daughter to his father, Aerys said that she smelled Dornish as an insult. This would have infuriated Elia and her family and hardened Rhaegar to the necessity of action. He conspired with Oswell Went of the Kingsguard to hold a tourney at Went's brother's castle at Harrenhal. A tourney would bring many of the noble houses together in one location in order to ostensibly hold an impromptu council. Right before the tourney, his wife Elia became pregnant again, and he was looking forward to the second of the 3 heads of the dragon. The tourney at Harrenhal. Brandon Stark went to Harrenhal as Rickard's proxy. He may have been hot-headed, but he was trained since birth to be the lord of a great house with the largest amount of land in the 7 kingdoms. He was pushing Ned into Ashara Dane's arms as a possible betrothal prospect. He was already betrothed to Catelyn Tully and Lyanna to Robert. We don't know if he had any plans yet for the young Benjen. Unlike on the show, I don't think Littlefinger went to the tourney at Harrenhal. Why would he? His grand love Catelyn was not in attendance, nor the family that fostered him. It was a political and martial event. He was not yet poised to be powerful enough or politically savvy enough to go it alone, and he didn't seem the type to enjoy the bloodshed. Did he have enough personal wealth yet to fund the trip? Older Littlefinger would definitely have been there. Younger Littlefinger would be attached to the hip to Catelyn, attempting to woo her away from Brandon.